Galileo Galilei. When Galileo proposed that Earth wasn't the universe's center, he faced severe backlash, ultimately leading to house arrest. In the early 1600s, Galileo Galilei, a prominent astronomer and mathematician, presented compelling evidence that Earth orbits the Sun. This directly contradicted the widely accepted view that Earth was central to the universe. His findings drew intense opposition from the Catholic Church, which declared his ideas heretical. In 1633, Galileo was forced to publicly retract his claims and placed under house arrest, barred from continuing to share his research. Only in 1992 did Pope John Paul II formally acknowledge Galileo's scientific achievements, officially recognizing his discoveries 350 years after they were first condemned. Alan Turing. Humanity. Recall the brilliant mathematician who cracked Nazi codes and saved countless lives in World War II? Our brilliant gratitude involved utterly wrecking his life. After single-handedly revolutionizing computer science and practically inventing the modern computer, Turing made one crucial mistake. He was openly gay in the 1950s. Defeating Nazis wasn't enough to overlook his personal life. In 1952, he was convicted of gross indecency and faced a horrifying choice: prison or chemical castration. Outstanding move. Humanity. Punishing a war hero just because he dared to live authentically. Tragically, Turing endured hormone treatments that destroyed his body and spirit, eventually leading to his untimely death in 1954 at just 41 years old. It took almost 60 years for the British government to finally issue a formal apology in 2009, followed by a pardon in 2013, decades after it could have helped. The man helped defeat fascism and shaped the digital world we live in today. And this is how we repay him? Malala Yousafzai. Born July 12, 1997, Malala Yousafzai transformed global perspectives on education and women's rights, becoming not only the youngest Nobel Peace Laureate, but also a trailblazing Pashtun voice. She demanded education, not privilege, and for daring to speak up, we answered with violence. Humanity, take a bow. At just 15, Malala challenged the Taliban's brutal ban on girls' education in Pakistan's Swat Valley, a near-fatal attack in 2012 that turned her into a global icon overnight. She's now the youngest Nobel Peace Prize winner ever. Despite her global fame and constant advocacy, Malala still faces threats, skepticism, and even hatred from some quarters. Malala didn't just survive, she thrived, turning her trauma into a relentless mission to ensure every girl gets to school. Yet somehow, parts of humanity still aren't convinced she deserves praise and protection, rather than criticism and conspiracy theories. Vincent van Gogh. Why humanity? Do you wait until genius is gone to finally notice its worth? Vincent van Gogh, everyone's possibly history's greatest artist, who, during his lifetime, sold exactly one painting. Vincent Willem van Gogh. Born 30. March 1853, Zundert, Netherlands. Van Gogh struggled his entire life with poverty, loneliness, and mental health battles, yet he kept creating masterpieces that now fetch hundreds of millions at auctions. People mocked him, dismissed his art as trash, and labeled him a crazy eccentric, because clearly, recognizing brilliance is just easier once someone's conveniently out of the way. He infamously removed part of his ear during an emotional breakdown, nowadays fodder for punchlines. But back then, society merely glanced and muttered, "Typical village misfit." Even his death at just 37 was shrouded in misery and mystery, leaving him uncelebrated and largely unknown. Now, of course, he's on coffee mugs, posters, and overpriced museum gift shop merch everywhere. It seems the world's apology to Van Gogh was basically, "Sorry we ignored your genius." Claudette Colvin. Who was the trailblazer whose powerful act of staying seated went unnoticed by most history books? Claudette Colvin, the original rebel on wheels. On March 2, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, 15-year-old Claudette Colvin decided enough was enough and refused to give up her seat on a segregated bus, 9 months before Rosa Parks' famous protest. Colvin was sidelined by her own movement, because apparently being a brave teen in black was just too inconvenient for society's preferred civil rights poster image. When the NAACP looked for a face to represent their cause, Colvin didn't make the cut. She spoke up boldly, young and unafraid, then faced the harsh spotlight again when pregnancy entered her story that very same year. The so-called perfect activist checklist clearly didn't include a courageous teen fighting for justice and equality. Claudette's brave stand led directly to a pivotal court case, Browder v. Gale, which eventually ended bus segregation in Montgomery. Henrietta Lacks. Have you ever donated to science without knowing it? No? Henrietta Lacks, someone who donated more to medical science than anyone on Earth without even being asked. In 1951, Henrietta Lacks walked into Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore for treatment, completely unaware that doctors would soon take her cells, known as HeLa, without her permission. Simply because they had an amazing ability to reproduce endlessly, these cells became the backbone of groundbreaking medical advancements like the polio vaccine, cancer treatments, and even IVF. Henrietta's immortal cells were changing the world, but her family knew absolutely nothing about it. No thanks, overlooked, and unrewarded. Henrietta passed away later that same year, never knowing her cells became the medical equivalent of gold. Decades later, after companies had profited millions from selling HeLa cells, someone profits from your family's genetic legacy even as you struggle to put food on the table. Finally, in 2013, the U.S. government issued a lukewarm acknowledgement that Henrietta deserved recognition for her unwilling donation. Yet, her family is still fighting today for genuine compensation and control over her legacy. When you thank medicine for saving lives, think about Henrietta Lacks, the woman who transformed science without even knowing it. Isn't a mere apology too little, too late? Ignaz Semmelweis. Do you wash your hands after using the restroom? Ignaz Semmelweis, the man responsible for that mind-blowing concept known as washing your hands, who was promptly thanked by society with ridicule and a trip to the asylum. In the mid-1800s, Ignaz Semmelweis, an Austrian-Hungarian doctor, noticed something unsettling. Doctors were moving straight from performing autopsies to delivering babies without cleaning their hands. Semmelweis dared suggest doctors wash their dirty hands. Naturally, medicine's response was ridicule and rejection. Semmelweis demonstrated clearly that hand-washing reduced childbirth deaths dramatically, from about 18% down to under 2%. Instead, his colleagues mocked him relentlessly, considering his idea ridiculous and overly simple. Poor Semmelweis became obsessed and frustrated, trying to convince doctors that, hygiene saves lives. Eventually, he was so shunned by the medical establishment that he was committed to an asylum, where he tragically died in 1865 after being severely mistreated. Years later, doctors discovered clean hands actually matter, just like Semmelweis tried to tell us from the start. Sorry we mocked you into madness first, Ignaz. Sybil Ludington. In April 1777, 16-year-old Sybil Ludington took off on a 40-mile journey, double Paul Revere's ride, by the way, to warn American forces that the British were attacking Danbury, Connecticut. While Revere had help and only rode 20 miles, Sybil did her ride alone, at night, through rough terrain. Her journey was tougher, longer, and possibly even more crucial. A couple of obscure historical mentions and a commemorative statue in a small New York town. Her bravery didn't fit into neat verses, or perhaps colonial America couldn't handle the idea of a girl coming to the rescue. She was out there riding into history while most teens today struggle to get off the couch. But here's a thought. Maybe it's time we collectively send Sybil Ludington a belated thank you note and an apology card for ignoring her epic ride all these years.